Good morning, guys. I'm here this morning to talk about GAPS and epilepsy. So in my GAPS Australia support group, I just asked, what do people want to know about? What do they want to know about? So one of the mums in the group wanted to know about GAPS and epilepsy. So I thought that's a fantastic topic to come and talk to you about. I've made some notes because, of course, I don't want to forget any of the things. Oh my gosh. And there's a cat climbing up my curtain because nothing's ever boring in my house. Just quietly bring that in. So I thought I would come and talk about GAPS and epilepsy. Now I need to preface this call or this talk with, I am not a medical doctor. I'm a naturopath and I'm a herbalist and I'm a GAPS practitioner. So I'm not talking from a medical doctor point of view. I'm just sharing from my point of view as a naturopath and a herbalist and a GAPS practitioner. The information that I'm using is based on Dr. Natasha's opinion of GAPS and epilepsy. She is a neuro surgeon, so she has some knowledge in the field of the working of the brain and so on. So the information is based on that, and I do need to preface this also that none of what I'm saying is to replace what your doctor has said to you, any medication that you're currently on, all of those sorts of things. You should always seek medical treatment when it's needed. So I'm just going to share a little bit about epilepsy. So epilepsy, of course, is when many of us have seen, we may know somebody who has epilepsy. We may have seen an epileptic seizure. I know I saw one when I was at school. One of the girls in my class was diagnosed with diabetes and epilepsy, and unfortunately for her, she had an epileptic seizure in the middle of our class, which was, a very embarrassing situation for her. And for many of us, it was quite traumatic because we'd never seen that sort of thing happen before. So we may have seen an epileptic seizure. We may know somebody who has epilepsy. You may not. But essentially what an epileptic seizure is the electrical currents of the brain sending out pulses. And those pulses that are sent out by the brain are the internal happenings of that epileptic seizure that we may see. Now, majority of epileptic patients there's a whole range of different classifications for epilepsy, but the majority of those cases fall into what is called idiopathic, which means essentially we have no idea why you're having the seizure or why you're having the epileptic fit, which is interesting because we have all this medical knowledge, but we still don't know what is causing the electrical storm that is happening in the brain during an epileptic seizure. Now, there can be a whole bunch of factors and causes for a seizure. It could be fever, kidney failure, liver failure, an electrolyte imbalance, a low blood sugar, lack of oxygen, low level calcium in the blood, hormonal abnormalities, metabolic errors, drug interactions. So you've introduced a drug, drug withdrawals. Trauma can cause a seizure, and I'm just saying seizure, not necessarily an epileptic one, but it can cause seizure, which could set off an epileptic seizure as well. A brain tumor. So it's, for me, when I have a client, I always want to make sure that they've been properly investigated to make sure that there is no brain tumor involved. There could be vascular issues or abnormalities. There could be a stroke. A stroke can cause a seizure, and the big one is toxins. Toxins can cause seizures, and this one is really important from a GAPS point of view because Dr. Natasha explains it this way when we have our practitioner training, is that the seizure itself is one of the ways that the brain uses as a detoxification tool. So when the brain is overloaded with toxicity, it gets to the point where it can't take that anymore, and it then sends out these electrical pulses and electrical currents to clear the space. So it is essentially this sort of clearing out of the toxins because the brain is overloaded with toxicity and it needs a way to push those toxins back so that it can function properly without too much damage. And so a seizure in some cases is because there are too many toxins within the body, and therefore the electrical pulsing that takes place during the seizure is a detoxing form that the brain uses, a tool that it uses to clear the space. And some people who have, and again I'm not saying all, Some people who have a seizure like this will say afterwards that they've got lots of clarity, that they're actually able to think really, really clearly. And that is because it's been this pulsating thing that has pushed the toxins away from the brain, and the brain is able to function again for that period of time until, of course, the toxins come back. So, with the invention of anti-epileptic drugs, mainstream medicine mostly has